So what we've got for you now is a panelist of public sector leaders to come up and share their thoughts and take your questions, and I invite questions and comments on this whole future for Clark as the aerotropolis of Asia's future. I should remind you that after lunch we will have from the horse's mouth the insights into aerotropolis and twin airport cities and what this all means and how it unfolds from one of the co-authors of the book. But for now we'll do the public sector panel discussion. We have four panelists going to come and join Ben here. I'd like to introduce them and invite them up one by one. And I'll start with the lady on the panel, if I may. So we have Ms. Faye Agoncillo Reyes. She's head of the Investments Promotion Group at the Board of Investments. You will see from your brochure a distinguished public sector career. She's responsible for the investments generation for the Philippines, strategic promotion into the country, and assets in the formulation of industrial policies. Faye, thank you for joining the panel, please. You will see a distinguished career here, Executive Director of the Centre of International Trade Expositions and Missions, Assistant Secretary for International Trade, Executive Director of Garments and Textile Export Board. So a wealth of experience in the public sector. Thank you for joining the panel. Also on the panel, the man that is responsible for It's More Fun in the Philippines, Honorary Ramon Jimenez, Secretary for the Department of Tourism. He's the man behind this tagline. He is the man behind the tagline, but he's not with us at the moment. We have somebody representing him. Okay, but it is more fun in the Philippines, and we have 133 destinations on Emirates from October the 1st. So my apologies for that. Representing the Secretary of Tourism, we have the Assistant Secretary for the Department of Tourism, Benito Benjon Jr. So Benito, please. And thirdly on the panel we have Attorney Arnel Casanova, President and CEO of the Basis Conversion and Development Authority. Another distinguished track record here. Of note is that he's received the Philippine Legion of Honor Medal, a very high distinguishment there. And he was also chosen by the Asia Society in New York as one of the top 21 Asia young leaders for the future. So let's welcome Attorney Arnel Casanova. And then to finally join the panel, we have a distinguished professor, very impressive academic qualifications here. Dr Bernardo Villegas is a professor at the University of Asia and the Pacific. He specializes in development economics, business economics, and social economics. As mentioned earlier, he's a Harvard PhD. He's also a visiting professor at the IESC Business School in Barcelona and a professor, as I said, at the University of Asia and Pacific. So these are our public sector panelists. Please give them all a welcome, and we'll express our gratitude to them for joining us today. I'm going to have to do a bit of a switch around, but that's probably not bad for me because I need more exercise. I'm what's called a wide body craft. As we know, they'll be coming in soon in October. So what I'd like to do, we've heard Ben's setting out some plans for the future. What I'd like to do is invite each of our four public sector panelists to give us some opening comments, just a couple of minutes, on how they see the potential, what is being done for the Philippines aviation industry generally, but specifically for Clark from the aviation sector, specifically here in Clark. And if I may, I'd like to invite ladies first, if that's okay, and ask Faye to start us off with just some opening comments. Thank you, Faye.
Good morning, everyone. I'm glad to be here in Clark, especially that I see Chisha Luciano and Captain Solis, who we were together at the air negotiating panel for 6 years, and we were insisting all the time that Clark should appear in all air services agreements. And so I'm glad that from one flight a day, you have about 21 flights. And I'm heartened to note that when I was speaking to Secretary Jimenez, that you're building another terminal, a tent, just to accommodate the huge influx of tourists. We're glad to hear that. Now, from the point of view of investments, John Forbes is right. There's been such an influx of investors coming into the country. Last year alone was like twice the year before that. So about over 500 investors that we talk to on a daily basis, and that translated to about, just for BOI and PEZA alone, about 15 billion in investment approvals. What is particular for Clark is that Clark is included, and aviation and logistics is included in the industry roadmap that the BOI has initiated. So we're really looking at the promotion of Clark as not only as a logistics hub, but a manufacturing hub as well. Thank you.
Okay, thanks very much, Faye. I think we'll probe a little bit more into this industrial aspect, manufacturing and logistics, as we get into the panel discussion. Benito, obviously some great things happening from the tourism perspective. Share with us your thoughts.
Thank you. First of all, allow me to extend my warmest congratulations to the organizers. This is very timely because when you look at the National Tourism Development Plan, a key strategy that is embodied is the promotion of international access and connectivity. And this is exactly what this conference seeks to achieve. I must also congratulate SIAC. I don't think there's any airport authority in the country, and please don't quote me, that works harder or more aggressively than Clark International Airport Corporation. I've been with Mr. Luciano in a few international events, and I can confidently say that the effort that he has exerted has set the benchmark, and something that we hope the other airport authorities can emulate. Certainly, the development of Clark Airport will play a very crucial role in our drive to achieve 10 million foreign visitors by 2016. Right now, we're seeing a bigger role for Clark, both as a gateway and as a destination in itself. And I'm hopeful that over the next couple of days, we can map out specific steps on how we can get more flights here into Clark. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Benito. Arnel, from the basis conversion perspective, done some fantastic progress in recent years. What's coming up next?
Well, good morning, everyone. Thank you for inviting me here, and I'd like to congratulate the organizers for coming up with this conference. I think it's about time, and we should have more of this. I think on the part of BCDA, being the landowner of all the Clark and other former U.S. military bases, we are wrapping up actually the development of the Bonifacio Global City. If you've seen that, it used to be an army camp, which is now the premier central business district. And we're moving towards the full development of Clark as a metropolitan area. And we're actually wrapping up the master planning of the unutilized and idle lands in Clark. And we see the fast development in the region, particularly we're looking at utilizing the airport and the seaport of Subic, serving the new metropolis. The area of the new city would be about 8,800 hectares, but this would be on a 30-year phased development. And we're looking at bringing in government centers, educational institutions. I've seen it earlier in the presentation. We're actually trying to attract also educational institutions to come into the city. And so that you could see, I think in the next 10 years, the Clark would eventually evolve into a new metropolitan district. And this would be a green and intelligent city. We have partnered with the Cisco and Senchos, who's been doing the ICT infrastructure in Songdo, actually. And we have partnered also with Urban Land Institute to look into the master plan that we've done so far. We have partnered with the Philippine Green Building Council to come up with the standards and rating system for the green building development. So I think it's the biggest project that we have so far now. And BCDA is right in the heart of developing and unlocking the values of provided in our mandate, which allows us to develop all the infrastructures and utilities within these special economic zones. The infrastructure in Subic, Clark, John Hay, Poro Point, and these former U.S. military bases were actually done by BCDA. SCTEX was a project of BCDA. And the way we see it with the good governance advocacy of the President, and good governance being one of the major challenges in public infrastructure implementation, I think we have a chance to really implement these projects fast. And I think the key is really the clarity of vision, the execution, and actually a determined action and the organization to come towards the success of any implementation. So I think we're right on the right track. We're doing it already. Actually, most of the presentations being done is already being started. So we see this as we move forward to the next years. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Arnel. Thank you. I hope you're thinking of some questions to put to our esteemed panelists. Before we do that, Dr. Bernardo, you're a specialist in development economics, amongst many other things. Could you give us your perspective on what's being done for Clark, aviation, and what more could be done?
Thank you very much. I'd like to say first that I'm the odd man out. I don't work for the government. Therefore, if I say something critical of the government, please quote me. But first of all, I will say a lot of good things about the government. First, let me assure, especially those of you who are coming from other countries, that this 7 to 8% growth rate that we will be seeing this year. So my forecast for 2013 is 8% of GDP growth. Now that growth rate is sustainable for the next 20 years thanks to the governance reforms that we are seeing in this present government. The President is really building on many other reforms before him. He says very humbly that he's just standing on the shoulders of all the other presidents who have come. So don't think that everything we can attribute to President Nonoy Aquino. But what he has added is the final touch, good governance. And that is why we are now attracting all of these investors mentioned by Fe. And what I'd like to do, and I purposely wore this batik barong, so it's a combination, a fusion between Indonesia and the Philippines, is to remind you that by 2015, we are beginning the most exciting experiment of a common market among 10 countries in the ASEAN. What happened in the last century to the European community will be happening to this region in the next 20 years. So just think back. After the Second World War, Germany was devastated, France was devastated, Italy was devastated. They had the common sense to put together a common market, which evolved into the EEC. They just made one mistake. They adopted a common currency. We will not make that mistake, but we will make a common market. In the same way that by the end of the last century, Europe, because of the EEC, was strong enough to challenge the US and Japan in economic supremacy. The ASEAN, with 600 million consumers, in 10 to 20 years, will be strong enough to challenge China and India for supremacy in this region. And it's what I would like you to consider when you talk about the Itropolis, that Clark is a perfect center for the Philippines to integrate into this ASEAN. First of all, it will have to be VIP. Vietnam, Indonesia, and the Philippines. The three largest economies that are considered as emerging markets in the list of the next 11 by Goldman Sachs. These are the most attractive sites for investment in the ASEAN. And then, of course, including the others. The problem with Thailand is aging too fast for a poor country. It's already suffering labor shortages. While Indonesia, the Philippines, and Vietnam are still enjoying what is called the demographic dividend, and we will have that at least for the next 20 years. Now, I said something critical. I think our government should forget talks about Cavite, Bulacan as an alternative. They're just confusing the foreigners. And I'm not saying this to please you people here. I've said this in other fora in Manila. There's absolutely no sense about talking about Cavite, Bulacan. They have no runways to talk about. And I'm going to say something probably very controversial. Even if the Secretary of Transport Industry comes from Cavite, we should not talk about Cavite. No. So, I can be very frank, precisely because I work for a private think tank. Now, why should we talk about Clark? Because, as Fe already mentioned, there is a very visible trend that a lot of Japanese, Korean, and China-based factories are now moving to the Philippines. You talk to Lilia de Lima. She cannot cope with all the requests of the Japanese companies who want to come here. And I come from Batangas, so I can be very, very objective. Southern Luzon is saturated. No more pesos can be put up there. I come from Santo Tomas, Batangas, and in my small town, there are probably 6 pesos, as Fe knows very well. Central Luzon has tremendous area for expansion, and you can absorb. Why are people moving away from Japan? You know this, those of you who are from outside. Energy has become even more expensive in Japan because of their closing down of the nuclear plants. Japanese have no more babies, no more workers. Japanese firms in China are closing down in Shenzhen, in Shanghai, in Guangzhou, also because in these Chinese cities, they've run out of workers. Some of these factories are suffering 30% to 50% attrition in their respective factories. That's why they're moving to Vietnam, the Philippines, and Indonesia. We're not alone, we're competing. But all this movement, Japan from China, will definitely be best located in Central Luzon. And my final statement is, we in our university put our money where our mouth is. Our expansion of 50 to 60 hectares, a new campus of University of Asia and the Pacific, will be in Pampanga. So I think I have given enough reason for you to convince the government to forget Cavite and forget Bulacan. Thank you very much.
Well, I'm thinking with these bold and profound statements, Doctor, maybe you should be working for the government. Okay, excellent, excellent round of opening comments from our public sector panelists. And of course, we had Ben's great presentation on the Clark Airport. We have, it's open floor now for your comments, your feedback, challenge, or question for our panel. If you just raise your hand, and if, in fact, sir, if you go, there's a microphone just there behind you. If you go to there, if you could just introduce, or this one here, even better, yeah. If you just introduce your name and the company that you represent, the organised represent, and then shoot us your question, please.
Good morning. I am Romeo Taruk, a resident of Angeles City, a simple resident of Angeles City. I am very happy for the presentations of our guests. I see a bright future for our community, our locality, and for Central Luzon. But I am concerned about the social cost it will bring to our community. Imagine the influx of migrant workers here will saturate our housing, our garbage we cannot collect. The criminality will increase. The traffic, right now we cannot move from here to Marquee Mall. It takes 30 minutes. From here to downtown, it takes 1 hour. What more if the airport is here? So what are you offering to mitigate the social cost to our community? Okay. BCDA is giving us 5% of the yearly income from Clark, but I think it's still late. But that is not enough. In Las Vegas, they give, for every passenger that the airplane brings, they pay $10 to the city. And if they depart, they pay $10. According to Tom Dixon, our director from Land Bank, in Phuket, they pay 30 something to mitigate the social cost of the surrounding communities. Can we put that in the planning of the expansion of the airport?
Yep.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. An excellent question. And of course, economic development has an impact on social communities, hopefully more positive than negative. But let's put that to our panel to explore here how much have we considered and factored in the social cost or the impact on the local communities of these, what these sound like fantastic developments. I'll come back to Ben first, if I may, because you've been at the forefront of a lot of this development that's already happening. How do you accommodate these sort of considerations into the planning process?
Well, yes. If you look at the planning and limit it to airports, then you might have some social problems. A huge airport brings also the dirt with it, the pollution with it. So that has to be contained. That is why you have to expand your concept into an aerotropolis. An aerotropolis brings the communities closer to the airport. It's like bringing your garage door closer to the boarding gates. So this is to eliminate too much traffic, too much chaos around the airport perimeter, is to build the communities much closer. This is what I was saying, bring them down to the 1 hour access. Yeah. And of course, all the surroundings here, many of the surroundings are still owned by BCDA, and I think you have heard Arnel Casanova here say that they're building a new city in this area, which will be free of the chaos and the pollution of a very large city. This is the concept of an aerotropolis.
Let's invite Arnel to comment on that, because you mentioned green and intelligent city. We saw earlier that since the conversion has been underway, I think it was 65,000 jobs, was it? Which has to be good for the community, and I think $4 billion worth of exports. So how do you factor in the potential negative consequences for the community into the overall economic development?
Well, thank you. I think that's a very valid question, and I really thank the person who asked that question, because it speaks of a citizenry who is engaged and concerned about a community. And that's why master planning is very important. And if you've seen what we did in Bonifacio Global City, the streets are better, the sidewalks are wider. Now, if you plan ahead, then you prevent urban sprawl, which actually congests the city and makes the city unsustainable. And that's why BCDA, as we plan a new city, we're also planning to help the local government units surrounding it to come up with their own master plans and land use plans. So the transport system would be biased towards mass transport instead of cars being on the road. So we'll have a city that would be walkable, and we'll have sidewalks which are wider, would have trees on it, that you could walk from one place to another. And we will have green technologies that would come in to make the environmental impact of the human beings and in the physical space would be lesser. So we want to reduce the carbon footprint of the development. So I think as we go along with the master planning, we definitely consult with the constituency, and we will help our local government also to come up with the visioning for their own cities to make them sustainable cities.
Okay, thank you, Arnel. Dr. Bernardo, would you like to comment on this topic?
In all countries with high rates of criminality, whether it's in Colombia or Mexico, the main source of criminality is unemployment and poverty. And so if you're able to develop this region and generate a lot of investments that will employ people, that would be a direct contribution to reducing criminality. And so I think that should be a consideration. Now, obviously, there should be a very good plan, as Mr. Casanova mentioned, to address the problem of environment damage. And as you know, as John was saying, mining is now in animated suspension because of all the concerns about environment. But in today's world, there is so much technology that can address the problem of pollution, garbage, etc. We just have to use the technology. And that's the next, let's say, criticism I would want to convey to the government. The government still has to remove so many of the restrictions, including those in the Constitution, that tell foreigners we don't want them. Foreigners, we don't want you even 1% in education. That's in our Constitution. Foreigners, we don't want you even 1% in anything that has to do with media. That's in the Constitution. Now, fortunately, yesterday, and Faye will know this, they came out with the news that the government is now examining the negative list. We should not have a negative list at all. So, now, they're constantly talking about negative lists. The Philippines still is suffering from decades of inward-looking, ultra-nationalistic, first Filipino policy. We have to cure Filipinos, including some people in government, of that disease. Thank you very much.
Okay, good. I'm really glad you're on the public sector panel. Okay, thanks for that, and thank you for your contribution, sir, in the audience. I want to bring in now Benito and look at the tourism opportunities here for Clark as an aviation hub. We've heard some great news this morning about Emirates. We've also heard some great plans, but I think what I heard is that we have 6 million passengers coming into a terminal that can handle 4.5 million passengers. Is that what I heard?
Yes. If you look at the submitted fleet plans of the airlines operate in here, just by this year, they would be deploying an average of about 6 million air seats to and from Clark.
All right, which is great news, right? But how do we... So from the tourism authority perspective, how do you synchronize your plans for boosting inbound tourism with the actual capabilities here in Clark to be able to accommodate those? You know, one of the important things about tourism is that the initial experience is positive and people will come back, right? The initial experience is negative and it paints a negative picture on their whole experience of that tourist trip. And as John mentioned this morning, more and more families are coming. It's not just for the golf, it's for family, countryside enjoyment. Give us some perspectives from the tourism about boosting tourism while managing the development as well.
Well, first of all, let me give you an idea of the kind of growth rate that we need to sustain between now and 2016 to achieve 10 million. We would need to grow by about 24-25% per year to the year 2016. And what's going to be crucial here would be opening up new destinations. Our projection is that over the next 3 years, Clark will have an increasingly larger share of international traffic. Many years ago, Manila accounted for about 96-97% of all international air traffic. Over the last few years, we've had other gateways, Mactan, Clark, Calibo, having a larger share. And this trend will continue. What will fuel the growth into Clark would be the LCC connection. And I'm glad that Captain Solis mentioned all the flights that have been connecting to Clark from different parts of Southeast Asia. In fact, last December, I took my family also on a short-haul trip, and we used Clark, so I can be a testimonial speaker for you. But the significant development, as we see it, is the recent announcement of Emirates to fly Dubai-Clark. And hopefully this is something that will jumpstart the introduction of other long-haul flights. Now, what does Clark have to do? We want Clark to be more than just a gateway. We want Clark to be a destination in itself. This will now require expanding the product offerings of Clark to different markets. If at the moment a bulk of your clients or tourists come here for golf or for gaming, you will eventually have to expand this to include adventure, maybe cuisine, and other types of tourist experiences. Now, talking about the arrival experience, this is something also that the airport authorities and its partners will have to look at, because as you very well know, the arrival experience and the departure experience as well are very, very crucial. No? People go back, they talk about their experience, they swap stories, and it's very important for them to leave a lasting impression, a positive impression, and tell their friends why it's more fun in the Philippines. So I think I echo what Captain Solis mentioned earlier and what Mr. Luciano mentioned, that Clark will be a very big player in Philippine aviation and tourism.
Very good. That's encouraging to hear. And I should just add, I arrived into Clark yesterday, and it was a wonderful experience coming into the airport. Cleared through immigration very quickly, bags very quick. I was very impressed. Yeah.
Let me just add to that, because I know that John Forbes mentioned some of the issues that were raised during the Arangkadahan workshop. I was there in Makati a few years back, and I'll be attending the one next week as well. But just to get you up to speed also on what we're doing to address the CIQ issues. Yeah. We will be writing DBM shortly to expedite the release of the budget so that BI can hire additional personnel. We had some problems in a couple of gateways in Central Visayas just a few weeks ago, where an inaugural flight into a Visayan city experienced some snags because BI personnel were not there. The same thing happened also in another city in Negros just a month ago. So these are some of the things that we are trying to address. On the issue of congestion, just to add to what Captain Ben mentioned earlier, the DBM will also be releasing funds for the installation of night landing facilities in about 14 local airports. So hopefully this will also help in decongesting traffic in Manila.
Okay, all good news. Thank you very much. Any other comments or questions? We have a gentleman there, sir, if you just introduce yourself. Thank you. Yeah, it's on.
Hello.
Hi.
Hi, I'm RV Perez. I'm the general manager of a newly established training center also here in Clark. It's called Philippine Academy for Aviation Training. It's a joint venture between Cebu Pacific and CAE. CAE is the world's largest manufacturer of flight simulators and global training center. But like Emirates, we've decided to put our faith in Clark to bring in Airbus standard training here in the Philippines. So my question is partly to my friend Captain Ben and also Professor Villegas. I think there are two issues that are constantly sort of distracting the government with regards to deciding on Clark. Number one is there's what Professor Villegas earlier mentioned about announcements that certain conglomerate will be building a mega airport in somewhere in Bulacan, and secondly, the issue of the railway, the express railway going to Clark. I know that it's been discussed earlier, but I'd like to get further elaborations from the panelists with regards to this issue of another airport in Bulacan and also the railway. Okay. And how, I guess from Captain Ben, how the other countries planned out the development of the railway. Thank you.
All right, good. And thank you for bringing your investment to Clark and setting up your business here. I'm sure that's very welcome. Let's thank him for that. And thank you for these 2 points. So 2 points specifically, the gentleman referred to them as potential distractions for the government in respect of further development of Clark. One is the high-speed rail that, from my understanding, has been talked about a lot. And the second one is the discussion that a conglomerate may be developing at some stage a mega airport that would perhaps displace the future development of Clark. Faye, may I bring you in here first, and particularly on the mega airport development, which I assume would be inbound investment. So whatever you may be able to share with us that you know about that, or whatever you know that you can't share anyway, and tell us what your perspective is on that.
Well, what I can tell you is that I sit in the Tourism Promotion Board for the DTI, and already in the board is actually DOTC, the Department of Transportation and Communication, and they are in charge of course, air terminals and airports. So we ourselves, as members of the board, would like to be briefed on the developments on this side. And to quote the Secretary of Tourism, they said he strongly said that Faye and I, our job is, in Tagalog, he said, magpasikip ng airport, meaning to bring in investors, to bring in the tourists. It is the job of our other colleagues in government, which of course we coordinate with, like the DOTC, the DBWH, and of course, more important also is the LGUs to really work together to be able to accommodate the influx of investments and tourists. So rest assured that whatever is in the plan is really to support the 8% GDP growth rate of the country. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Faye. So I hope that helps. Is there anybody here from DOTC that wants to comment? Or is anybody here from DOTC first? Okay, maybe not. Let's thank you, Faye, for that. I want to come on to the high-speed rail. I live and am based in Hong Kong, and the whole idea of the downtown city check-in, I think, has been a phenomenal success over and above what people had really expected it. I think, Ben, you mentioned there's a linkage. It's 60 minutes downtown to Clark, and that new development will be a precursor to a potential high-speed rail. Where is that in the planning? The gentleman said that high-speed rail has been a bit of a distraction. It hasn't happened. Where do you see it coming through in the future?
Well, the North Rail system, the North Rail project started, I think, about almost 10 years ago. Somehow, because of so many problems, it was abandoned. Then there were ideas of bringing a high-speed rail from Port Bonifacio, from Makati into here. It's about 100 kilometers. But then the government was stunned by the cost of putting up such a high-speed rail system. 25 million in one of the studies per kilometer. That's $2.5 billion to move it. Now, we have some vivid example of what a rail system can cost an operator. Look at MRT, look at LRT. The government is now at the quandary on even what to do with it. Yet MRT moves 180 million passengers in 10 hours of each day, 365 days of the year. Now take that cost and expand it to 100 kilometers. Can the rail viability be sustained when you also need a 24-hour, 7 kind of rail system every 15 minutes to fit in the airport? Like I said in my presentation, even if you had a 15 million terminal today, that 15 million passenger volume will not be reached in the first year or so. Most probably, on best effort, will be there 5 years from now. So can you have a $2.5 billion railway system take be there at day one as a priority project into Clark. I do not think so. It's a very risky proposition. I know Hong Kong had their railway system on day one, but the British government wanted to spend the 250 billion before they would leave Clark. I mean, they leave Hong Kong to the Chinese in 1997. Take a look at other airports. Narita never had their railway system to Terminal 1 until 13 years later. Taiwan, the new airport, Taoyuan Airport, has already been in existence for 15 years. It has a volume now, passenger volume of close to 50 million passengers a year. It has no rail system. It is still being serviced by bus. And it's a 67 kilometer travel. It's not very far. If you look at 67 versus 80, you're most probably talking about another 5 or 10 minutes more. So these things have to make sense first. The only thing is that I'm worried about is what is the priority? What are the priorities? The airport first or the railway system first? Like I said, you can end up having a story that both project ends up bankrupt.
Okay, thanks, Ben. Sir, I hope that's helped with your concerns about the distractions. Arnel wants to comment, and then I want to move on to industrial investment.
Just to address the connectivity between Clark and Manila, we made a proposal actually to the DOTC that is, while we are planning for the railway system, which is an ideal infrastructure, for the meantime, we could actually immediately implement a BRT system, a bus rapid transit system, which works like a railway as well, and could bring a lot of people from north of Manila to Clark, utilizing the Mindanao Avenue alignment and the NLEX alignment. What you need for a BRT system is just segregate a lane, and then you bring in these big buses, and then make it like work like a train system with the scheduled trips. Then immediately you could have that system. Can be implemented in a year's time, actually, if you make a decision now. So what I think in transport planning and even in city planning, what's important is you must have a complete understanding of human behavior. But because human beings are the ones who's going to use this, so eventually you have to have this kind of system that would allow people to be used, you know, to riding from Manila to Clark to Manila. As long as the trip is predictable, I think that would be fine. So immediately that project could actually be implementable as we plan on a long term for a railway system, which I believe that the DOTC has, because it has a Luzon railway transport plan. But for the BRT, it could immediately be implemented. Thank you.
It sounds eminently sensible. What was the response to your proposal?
It was actually positive. Secretary Abaya is positive about the idea.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, good. So that could well happen. We could see that happening. Yes. Okay. All right, good. Thanks. I want to, I'm conscious it's nearly time for lunch, but I want to talk about manufacturing and logistics and come back to Faye again. You mentioned it in your opening comments, and I think the having the blessing of certainly the area of land that we have in the vicinity of a ready-made airport, we need to, I think beyond tourism, as obviously we all are doing. But I'd like to ask you, when you're talking to potential investors, specifically about Clark being the base, we have this wonderful global gateway, logistics city, we have plenty of land, as we saw on Ben's. What are they hesitant about that precludes them making a decision and a commitment to come to Clark? What else would we need to do in order to get more investment in, to set up manufacturing, production, services, logistics operations?
First of all, I'd like to congratulate Clark and Central Luzon for being the host of of fashion items such as Coach, Ralph Lauren, that is very sensitive when it comes to logistics. So please give yourselves a hand. And also congratulations to KGL, the GGLC. They have really invested to make Clark to become a supply chain city. And John Forbes is not here anymore, but I'd like to mention that he was mentioning Dongguan. Many companies from Dongguan, China, are actually here already. They found that China's cost is too much to bear in all aspects. So rest assured that if only we can, maintain this momentum, we are really quite in a good place, most especially Clark, wherein we are hosting the fashion items. I was just telling, here's John from Dongguan. Aside from, of course, Foxconn, most of the manufacturing are already here, from handbags to luxury goods. They are not only in Clark, but they're also in Angeles Industrial Park and Bataan. So that's very good news for this region. Thank you.
Okay, that's great. Thank you for sharing that with us. I'd like to bring Dr. Bernardo back in on this point here about attracting inbound investment that creates large-scale operations, therefore drives employment, benefits, knock-on benefits for the community. In having the hub, the Clark Aviation facilities that we have here, coupled with the logistics city, additional opportunities that you see there to take advantage of that? People that need high-speed air connectivity in certain sectors, maybe?
Well, first of all, let me inform you that for more than 20 years now, I have been sitting in the board of advisors of Rolls-Royce. And as you know, they're in the business of engines. And some of you are familiar with this. Dual Tech Foundation has been producing a lot of electromechanical workers who are the ones who maintain and repair Airbuses. Lufthansa Technique. Lufthansa Technique has been very happy with the TESDA certified technical school called Dual Tech. And there are now actual initiatives in Pampanga. Dr. Briones and company have actually replicated the Dual Tech. I would really emphasize this area as an educational hub, not only for a lot more universities like Angeles, Holy Angels. I'm sure we can multiply the number of universities here. Plus TESDA certified vocational schools. I'm very glad I was talking to Mr. Abong Tayag earlier. As you know, you are already training in this Central Luzon butchers for Australia. Australia is running out of butchers. And if not butchers, they will go bankrupt because they cannot slaughter their cattle. No? So there are a lot of things, and probably one thing that you should give more emphasis to, once you have all the educational institutions here, would be BPO and KPO. I still want to see a lot more business process outsourcing and knowledge process outsourcing in this area. You know, small cities like Dumaguete, Bacolod, Iloilo are already flourishing. I think Central Luzon has not done enough. And as you very well know, there are now 700,000 workers for BPO. Many of them very well paid. And BPO is now graduating to knowledge process outsourcing. Meaning it's not voice anymore. It's accounting, animation, fashion design, and so on and so forth that can be done in the Philippines. And I think Central Luzon has a lot of those human resources that you can cultivate for BPO and KPO.
Okay, well, thanks very much. So we have plenty of opportunities here to continue to develop. We've learned a fantastic story about the tourism picture. We've got educational opportunities to set up centers of learning, academic institutions. bring in students, and then that gives us additional opportunities from there, expanding more BPO and KPO opportunities, and of course the industrial and logistics activities. Would you please join me in thanking our panel for sharing their time, their insights with us on this public sector discussion. Thank you.